Imagine you're standing on the edge of a misty fjord, the salty sea air whipping through your hair, and in the distance, a cluster of longhouses rises like ancient guardians against the rugged Norwegian landscape. But wait, what's that sound? The low hum of daily life, not the clash of swords. No battles here, my friend. We're diving deep into the heart of a Viking settlement, where the real drama unfolds not on the battlefield, but in the hearth, the fields, and the hidden corners of everyday existence. Buckle up, because this isn't just history, it's a mind-bending journey through a world where survival was an art form, ingenuity was currency, and every mundane task hid secrets that could blow your modern mind. Have you ever wondered how a society without supermarkets, electricity, or even basic plumbing built thriving communities that echoed through the ages? Stick around, and I'll unravel it thread by thread, starting with the very ground beneath their feet. Let's transport you back to the year 900 AD, to a place like Birka in Sweden or Kaupang in Norway, bustling Viking hubs where thousands lived, traded, and thrived. Picture this. No sprawling cities with skyscrapers, but a network of wooden longhouses clustered together like a giant family reunion. These weren't just homes, they were multifunctional marvels. A single longhouse could stretch up to 100 feet long, housing an entire extended family, grandparents, parents, kids, aunts, uncles, and even the occasional thrall. That's Viking for slave, but more on that later. The walls? Made from timber planks or turf, insulated with moss and earth to keep out the brutal Nordic winters. Inside, a central hearth blazed day and night, not just for warmth, but as the beating heart of the home. Smoke curled up through a hole in the roof. No chimneys here, folks. It was smoky, sure, but that preserved the meat hanging above and kept pests at bay. Mind-boggling, right? How did they breathe in there without modern ventilation? But that's where Viking smarts shine. They positioned the houses to catch prevailing winds, creating natural airflow. But hold on, what if I told you these houses weren't static? They could be dismantled and rebuilt elsewhere if the soil wore out or raids threatened. Mobility in a settled life? That's the Viking paradox we'll unpack next. As dawn breaks over the settlement, the first stirrings begin. Roosters crow, if they had them. Actually, Vikings kept chickens for eggs and meat, but their morning started with the lowing of cattle or the bleat of sheep. Farming was the backbone, you see. Contrary to the pillaging pirate image, most Vikings were farmers first. They'd rise with the sun, men and women alike heading to the fields. Barley, oats, rye, these hardy grains formed the staple diet. But here's a hook. Did you know Vikings practiced a form of crop rotation centuries before it became scientific in Europe? They'd divide fields into sections, planting one, leaving another fallow, and using the third for grazing. Ingenious, especially in Scandinavia's short growing season, only about 100 frost-free days a year. Imagine the pressure. One bad harvest and starvation loomed. So they innovated. They used iron plows pulled by oxen, far superior to wooden ones elsewhere in Europe. Women often managed the dairy, milking cows, making cheese and butter and wooden churns. Skyr, that thick yogurt-like stuff Icelanders still eat today, Viking invention. But wait, curiosity piqued. How did they preserve food without fridges? That's the payoff. Fermentation, smoking, drying, and salting. They'd bury fish in lye to make lutefisk, a gelatinous delicacy that sounds gross but sustained them through winters. Mind-boggling fact, some settlements had communal smokehouses where entire communities preserved herring catches. But what about the kids? Were they just playing while adults toiled? Not a chance. Keep reading and I'll reveal how Viking childhood was a boot camp for survival. Wandering through the settlement, you'd smell it before you saw it, the smith's forge. Crafts were the lifeblood, turning raw materials into tools of empire. The smithy was a hot hammering hub where iron ore from nearby bogs was smelted into axes, knives, and nails. Vikings were masters of bog iron, extracting it from marshy deposits, a process so efficient they exported tools across Europe. But here's where it gets addictive.
Imagine a smith not just forging weapons, remember, no battles today, but intricate jewelry. Using techniques like filigree and granulation, they'd craft silver brooches inlaid with amber or glass beads. Women wore these as status symbols, pinning cloaks with owl-shaped fibulas. And the woodworkers? They carved everything from ship prows to combs from walrus ivory. Combs, you say? Oh yes, Vikings were obsessively clean. Archaeological digs reveal combs, tweezers, even ear spoons in every grave. They bathed weekly, more than most Europeans, and used saunas for steam baths. Saunas in the Viking Age? Absolutely. Heated rocks and water for that steamy cleanse. But curiosity calls. If they were so hygienic, why the barbarian rep? Payoff. It's all propaganda from Christian monks they raided. In reality, settlements buzzed with artisans, potters firing clay vessels, weavers on upright looms creating woolen sails and clothing dyed with woad for blue or madder for red, natural dyes from plants and insects, mind-boggling chemistry without labs. Now, let's peek inside a longhouse at midday. The family gathers around the hearth for a meal. No forks here, knives and spoons only, eating from wooden bowls. Porridge from grains, stewed vegetables like cabbage, turnips, and leeks, meat, pork from pigs rooting in forests, beef from cattle, but seafood dominated. Cod, salmon, even whale if lucky. They'd forage berries, nuts, and mushrooms, brewing mead from honey for special occasions. But here's a hook. Did Vikings have a sophisticated social hierarchy that dictated who ate what? At the top, the Jarl, chief, and his family dined on the best cuts. Below, free farmers, bondi, then thralls at the bottom. Thralls were captives from raids, doing the grunt work, but they could earn freedom and integrate. Mind-boggling. Slavery was fluid. A thrall's child might be free if born to a free parent. Family life was tight-knit, marriages arranged for alliances, but women had rights. They could divorce, own property, and run farms while men were away. Kids learned by doing. Boys herded animals, girls spun wool from age 5. Games? Bone dice, board games like Nefertafel, Viking chess, teaching strategy. But what about education? No schools, but oral sagas passed knowledge, stories of gods and heroes recited by skalds or poets around the fire. Curiosity, were Vikings literate? Payoff, many used runes for carving messages on stones or wood, not full books, but enough for trade tallies and love notes. Yes, Vikings left romantic inscriptions like "Kiss me" on bones. As afternoon wanes, trade comes alive. Settlements like Hedeby in Denmark were trade meccas, with markets teeming with merchants from Arabia, Byzantium, even India. Vikings traded furs, amber, slaves, sadly, and walrus ivory for silver, silk, spices. They'd weigh goods on balance scales, using hack silver, chopped up coins as currency. No banks, but trust-based deals sealed with handshakes or oaths to gods. Mind-boggling, their scales were so precise they detected forgeries. And the marketplace? A sensory overload. Spices scenting the air, exotic birds squawking, glass beads glittering. Women haggled fiercely. They were economic powerhouses. But hook, what if a dispute arose? No police, so thing assemblies, community courts, where free men and sometimes women voted on resolutions. Laws memorized in verse, no written codes yet. Justice was communal, with fines or outlawry as punishments. Outlawry meant anyone could kill you without repercussion, brutal but effective deterrent. Dusk falls and religion weaves its magic. Vikings worshipped Pantheon. Odin for wisdom, Thor for protection, his hammer amulets everywhere, Freya for fertility. No churches, sacred groves, or home altars with idols. They'd sacrifice animals at bloats, feasts, sharing meat with gods. Mind-boggling. Human sacrifice? Rare, but in extreme cases for favor. Daily life infused with superstition, runes for luck, cider magic practiced by vulvas, female seers who traveled settlements foretelling futures with chants and staffs. Women dominated magic, seen as powerful. But curiosity, did they fear death? Payoff, no. Valhalla was for warriors, but most expected hell or rebirth. Burials reflected this. Ship graves with goods for afterlife, like the Oseberg ship with its tapestries and sleds.
Night deepens, longhouses alive with stories. Skalds recite epics, families mend tools by firelight, sleep on benches with furs, privacy minimal, curtains divided spaces. But what about health? No doctors but herbal remedies, willow bark for pain, aspirin precursor, garlic for infections, bone setting common, dentistry with files. Life expectancy? Around 40, but survivors tough. Hook, secrets in the soil. Archaeology reveals vegan-like diets in lean times with nettle soup and hazelnuts. We've scratched the surface, but let's dive deeper into specifics. Take clothing. Wool tunics, linen undergarments, leather shoes, dyes from across the world, Persian indigo via trade. Jewelry signified status, arm rings as portable wealth. And tools? Iron sickles, adzes, tech advanced for the era. Expanding on farming, they terraced hillsides, irrigated with ditches. Animals wintered indoors, their heat warming homes. Manure fertilized fields, closed-loop sustainability. Crafts detail, shipbuilding without blueprints, clinker method, overlapping planks riveted, flexible for waves. But settlements had boatyards for repairs, not just raids. Social life, feasts with drinking horns, wrestling games, marriages with bride prices, honeymoons literal, honeymead month. As we wrap this epic, reflect. Vikings weren't just warriors, they were innovators, families, dreamers. Their settlements pulsed with life, ingenuity that shaped Europe. But wait, one last hook. What undiscovered secret lies in the next dig? Curiosity eternal. And there we were, standing at the edge of that eternal curiosity, staring into the soil of a Viking settlement, wondering what secrets the next spade might unearth. But what if I told you we've only just begun? We've glimpsed the surface, the longhouses, the fields, the forges, but the real mind-blowing depth lies in the layers beneath, layers of ingenuity, resilience, and hidden worlds that modern archaeologists are still piecing together. Imagine this, not just one settlement, but a web of them connected by rivers, seas, and invisible threads of culture. From the frozen shores of Greenland to the bustling harbors of Dublin. Yes, Vikings founded cities. Daily life pulsed with rhythms we can barely fathom today. Ready to dive deeper? Because now we're expanding this journey, doubling down into the nuances, the overlooked wonders, the addictive details that make you question everything you thought you knew about these barbarians. Hold on tight, the next hook is coming fast. Let's rewind for a moment and zoom out. Picture an aerial view of a full Viking settlement, like Ribe in Denmark or York in England, Jorvik to them. Clusters of long houses huddled around a central path, smoke rising from multiple hearths, surrounded by fenced fields and a harbor teeming with knarrs, those sturdy merchant ships. These weren't random sprawls, they were planned with defensive ditches, wooden palisades, and gateways. Mind-boggling, some settlements had street grids predating medieval towns, with plank roads to combat mud. In winter, those roads froze, turning the place into an ice rink. Yes, Vikings ice skated on bone blades for fun and transport. But here's the curiosity spark. How did they manage waste in such dense living? No sewers, right? Wrong. Excavations show sophisticated drainage systems, ditches lined with stones carrying runoff to rivers. They even had communal latrines over streams or pits lined with moss for comfort. Hygiene obsessives, remember? But what about the animals living among them? Cows, pigs, chickens often shared the longhouse ends, their body heat a natural furnace. Imagine the smells, manure mixed with smoke and drying herbs. Yet it worked, a closed ecosystem where nothing went to waste. Dung fertilized fields, bones became tools, feathers stuffed pillows. Now step inside that longhouse again, but this time linger in the dim light. The central fire pit wasn't just for cooking, it was the social hub. Benches lined the walls, doubling as beds at night, covered in wool blankets and animal skins. Platforms for storage underneath, hiding grain from rats. Walls hung with tapestries woven by women, depicting myths or family histories. Lighting? Whale oil lamps or tallow candles flickering shadows that danced like spirits. Privacy? Almost none. Entire families slept in one space, divided by woven screens or curtains. Intimacy happened quietly, or not at all during crowded winters. But Hook, did this lead to tension? Payoff? Surprisingly harmonious, with strict etiquette. Loud snoring? Banished to the barn. Arguments settled by the head of house, usually the woman when men were trading. Yes, women ruled the roost indoors. They held the keys, literally. A bunch of iron keys on a chain symbolized authority, unlocking chests of valuables. Speaking of women, let's unpack their world, because it's mind-blowing how empowered they were compared to contemporaries. From dawn, they milked, churned butter using plunge churns that kids operated, spun wool on drop spindles while walking, multitasking masters. They brewed ale, essential since water could be unsafe. Ale was weak, drunk daily, flavored with bog myrtle or juniper for that hop-like bitterness. Hops came later. A good brewmaster woman gained respect settlement-wide. Childbirth, handled by bidwives with herbal knowledge, raspberry leaves for labor, fennel for milk flow. Infants swaddled in linen, teething on amber beads, natural painkiller. Girls learned weaving on warp-weighted looms, creating intricate patterns that told stories. Boys, herding, fishing with nets or hooks made from bone. But curiosity, were kids disciplined harshly? Not really. Sagas show playful parenting, with toys like wooden horses, boats, even dolls. Games taught skills. Nautliklik, a rough bowl game like hockey, built toughness without weapons. Shift to the fields now, where survival hinged. Farming wasn't primitive. They used ard plows with iron shares, turning soil efficiently. 3-field rotation, one for spring crops, barley, one for winter rye, one fallow with nitrogen-fixing peas. They manured heavily, harvested with sickles, threshed with flails in barns. But in harsh years, foraged wildly, heather for roofing, birch for baskets, willow for fishing traps. Beekeeping in log hives for honey, the only sweetener. Mead halls weren't myth, feasts celebrated harvests with skalds reciting poetry. Mind-boggling, poetry was currency, a good verse earned gifts. But what fueled the forge that made those plows? Enter the blacksmith, the unsung hero. Bellows pumping air into charcoal fires, reaching 1,200 degrees Celsius, hammering pattern-welded iron for strength. Not just tools, nails for ships, scissors for shearing sheep, keys for locks. Vikings had padlocks. They recycled metal obsessively, melting down old tools. Apprentices learned young, the clang of hammer on anvil, a settlement soundtrack. Nearby, the jeweler's bench, casting silver in clay molds, using lost wax for detail. Tortoise brooches for women's aprons, Thor's hammers for protection, runes inscribed for magic. Amber from the Baltic trade, garnets from India, global before globalization. Stew bubbling, onions, carrots, herbs, perhaps horse meat, taboo later but practical. Bread from flat stone ovens, unleavened barley loaves, butter thick, cheese aged in whey. Imported luxuries for the elite, wine from France, spices via Constantinople. Eating with personal knives, sharing bowls. Conversation flowed, news from traders, gossip, riddles to sharpen wits. Afternoon, market day in larger settlements. Stalls with Arab dirhams, Frankish glass, Slavic slaves, grim reality. Barter or silver by weight, women dominant in trade, weighing accurately. Disputes to the thing, under open sky, laws spoken aloud. Religion intertwined daily, offerings to house spirits, blots for seasons, vulvas with staffs, chanting Galder songs. Dreams interpreted, omens watched, ravens for Odin. Evenings, storytelling, music on lyres or bone flutes, board games by firelight, nephitaphel, strategy mirroring life. Death, not end, but journey, ship burials for elite, loaded with goods, set alight or buried. Common folk, graves with tools, jewelry. Deeper still, environmental impact, deforested for iron smelting, but adapted with turf buildings. Genetic legacy, diverse DNA from captures, integrations. Legacy echoes, democracy in things, exploration spirit, craftsmanship enduring. And yet, what if a lost settlement awaits discovery, an untouched longhouse with frozen meals revealing diets unknown,
or runes telling untold loves. This world wasn't savage, it was sophisticated, resilient, alive. Vikings built foundations we stand on, in law, trade, exploration. Curiosity satisfied? No, it's just ignited. The fjord mists call again.